Hey guys, welcome back to the Musings of Maverick channel, where I'm your host Maverick, and today we're going to be looking at Kotobuki Episode 2. So, I just got back from my vacation, and I'm currently trying to catch up to all the episodes that I missed, which includes the second episode of Kotobuki. And also, I apologize in advance if my voice sounds a little bit off. I do have a sore throat right now, although I don't think it's going to affect the video too much. So, last episode, we got basically a sort of introductory episode to the series, or as it turns out, they're trying to build a franchise out of it. So, sort of like an introduction to the franchise. So far, from all the comments I've gathered and all the things I've read, it seems like the technical aspects of this anime are fairly accurate, except for a few things, such as maybe some planes being a little bit too easy to down compared to others. Maybe the capabilities between the fighters is maybe not as accurate as it could have been in terms of technological edge, etc., etc. But for the most part, it's technically accurate. The sounds all sound authentic, and so on and so forth. Although, as an introductory episode, I definitely feel that there are some things missing from it. So it's sort of missing a focus point. It's really hard to tell how this series will go. Is it going to be character driven? Is it going to be story driven, event driven? Is it going to be something like a monster of the week thing where you have new enemies, new tactics each week? Or are they going to do something like a slice of life and blow everyone's mind, right? So we really don't know. And to be honest, I feel like it's not quite clear what this series is for. Like, who is it for? Is it for pure military enthusiasts, or is it for people who want to watch cute girls doing cute things? As much as I don't really like that label. In any case, hopefully we'll have our answers in this episode, so let's jump right in. And let us begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Okay, is this another high galaxy? Okay, so this is a rival airship, I'm guessing? Oh, and here's the opening. Alright, I'm gonna skip this opening, and I'll see you guys in just a second. So it follows the format of being a opening song that was used as the ending song for the first episode. Yeah, I guess I agree. Yeah, that was like a direct disobedience of orders. 389 times. She was this close to being shot down last episode. Of pancakes? Okay. Ooh. Yeah. Really? They did mention a sixth member before, but I'm not quite sure. Ooh. Oh, okay. Yeah, it is. So she's had an injury? Her pancakes! So now she's going to go berserk as well? Okay. Okay. Gador? A VIP? Counselor? Okay. So we're getting some information on the, I guess, world setting now? Hmm. I mean, I get that they're trying to set up the story or the world setting through the events happening on the screen, but it's really not that easy to follow what's happening.
質問は。
二人ともそんだけそっくりで一緒に生活して同じもん食べてたらやっぱ似てくるものとか。
じゃあこれであとは空賊が出ないことを祈りましょう。
マダム申し訳ありませんっつったよね。超びっくり。
客だからだろう。
でもマダムのこと嫌いだって言ってた。嫌いになるくらいの付き合いがあるってこと？初対面の嫌い方じゃなかったし。
あなた時々思いもかけない洞察力を発揮しますのね。
もう少し論旨を平面に立ててもらえるとケイトは助かる。
好き嫌いの感情を生み出すまでには性格、思考、趣味などを知るための交際期間が必要です。よってマダムと女子は知人同士、もしくは
Yeah, 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 we know that.
という推測ですわ。
なるほど、理解した。はいはい、私一目見た時から虫が好かない人なんだと。
Come on. So, it seems like something is up. Maybe the other squadron isn't going to properly back them up or something? Do they want this to fail?
食事はまあまあね。少し塩気がきついけど。
担当に伝えておきます。ユーリア女さん。自分はそろそろ副船長業務に。
航海士たちに任せておけば？それとも私と一緒にいるのが嫌ってこと？
めっそうもありません。
ご覧なさいよ。ちょうどキマノの町の廃墟が見えるわ。ここがついこの間まで栄えていたなんて信じられる？
10年前ですか。
Okay.
ラハマはまだ岩塩が出るからいいけど、資源のない元津や室菓なんて悲惨なものよ。ここ3年で人口半減ですって。
ラハマだってガドールだってあのポロッカだって安穏とはしてられません。
There's a lot of names being thrown around here.
ユーリアさんは急進派なんでしたっけ？元に急進的ユーア派？
勝手にレッテル貼らないでくれる？簡単に決めつけて分かったふりするのって最悪。
すいません。
いい？仕方がない話なの。みんなで協力して生存努力をしないと、自由を罠に結果全部檻にぶち込もうと北総エンでるやつに飲まれちゃう。相手がクソみたいな連中だって一緒に心中するより生き残る方がいいでしょ。だから手を組むのよ。何？あなた横並びに手を組むことには反対派？イサオとかいうクソ野郎のなんとか連合に賛成なの？それとも何にも考えてないただのバカ？
いやいや、日和見元い正当的中道主義ですから。
Traditional centrist.
すいません。
でも過激な発言で敵も多いですよね。空賊離脱者支援法みたいな条例通そうとして揉めてます。
Ex-pirate reintegration. So she was an ex-pirate and now she's a counselor?
変態？お付き合い長いんですか？
キンダーの頃から。
キンダー？
In kindergarten?
ガドルでも大暴れするつもりなんでしょ。
ああ、全体会議がありますもんね。喧嘩番長ですね。喧嘩番長。
足を洗ったら仕事も紹介するし、生活も助けますよっていう条件だ。
なんでダメ？なんで？
罪を犯した人間は信頼できないと。
Mm.
ケツの穴ちっちゃくない？
おまけに仕事を彼らに取られるかもしれない。
それはやだ。
自分の生活が厳しいのに空賊上がりに金を出したくないというのは感情としては当然だろう。
あら、ハヤブサ可愛いのよね。私大好き。ハヤブサは羽の形が好きよ。スッとしてて。
すですか。
でも、もう少し頑丈だとよかったわね。ペナッペナだし、武装もちょびちょびだし、当たったらすぐ落ちちゃう。
Yeah.
否定はしませんが、それでもこいつの軽さはパイロット次第で大きな利点になりますぜ。
そうかしら？鎧着込んだ大男に裸で突っ込んでいく様が見えるんだけど。違う？パイロットさ。ルールーは随分あなたたちを可愛がってるみたいだけど。
可愛がってる？嘘だ。
嘘じゃないわ。あの子はねじくれているから伝わらないでしょうけど。学生時代から何人あの子に惚れたって男子を横取りしてやったこと？
What?
三角関係？
それ以前告白する前に割り込んで引っ掛けて手玉に取って捨ててやったもの。
ゲドですね。
ありがとう。ルールーからあなたたちを取ってあげたらどうするかしら。この先もずっとこのままでいられると思ってたらお花畑もいいよ。
1時の方向に消え、距離50キロ。護衛隊よりです。レーダーに反応。不明機3グループ。
Again, I kind of see what they're trying to go with by using her as a catalyst to introduce the larger world, but I do think there's better ways of doing it, because after all that, I'm still quite lost as to, well, we know that there's lots of different factions around, right? Maybe nations, lots of towns. Why exactly the population is disappearing, we don't know. We know there's lots of pirates, and then there's also lots of pirates reintegrating. But why they turned to piracy in the first place, and we don't know.
前回を顧みない上に私の命令に従えないなら出動させられない。
休養明けの非撃墜率が2.8%上昇。私は上昇しないもん。
あなたは退院したばかりなんだから従いなさい。堪忍袋の尾の長さと戦闘機乗りの寿命は比例するものですわ。
そうなの？気の短い戦闘
Two Mavericks in one squad seems a little bit too much to handle.
いいチャンスね。
相手は猫のマークの白熊だ。白くは96式艦上戦闘機。数はおそらくそれほど多くないはずだ。
発進する。
Again, I mentioned how this runway isn't really necessary to take off from an airship, but it looks cool. Alright.
寿飛行隊一気入魂。
Are you seriously flying in a suit and tie?
機体数確認中。20、30。
おいおい、なんだその数。
やっぱりね。
やっぱりって。
ただの空賊なら私を襲うわけがない。
なんで空賊が火を持ってるんだ。
Heens. Okay.
妙ですね。96式ではなく、
Hmm.
どこにそんなお金があるんでしょう。
So I guess this is more of a political situation, maybe?
空賊の分際で攻撃が的確ですこと。
So they're probably not pirates. Just pretending to be pirates.
久しぶりの空最高。
お前の役割はキリエの援護だ。
Okay. Well, coming down from the top is a classic maneuver. Still though, with the numbers advantage that the enemy has, I'm not quite sure if they're able to outmaneuver or outflank the enemy. That doesn't seem too realistic.
本当に白熊だ。いつもこんな数いないし、飛燕だし。それに統率も取れている。あらら、うちの正反対。 しか、キリエの後方につけ。
Okay. So they are definitely more heavily armored.
飛んでよ。はやぶさは前しか見ないように作られてんの。何のための二人組なんだよ。もっと後ろの位置考えて飛べって言ってんの。光栄はただのケツ持ちじゃないんだから。それこの前私が地下に言いたかったことじゃん。何さも自分が考えた風に言ってんの。だったら言えよ、伝えろ、共有しろ。
Oh, come on, shut up.
ちょっとキリエ話聞け。キリエバ
Okay. Loop-de-loop. Yeah, they only have 200 rounds. So you're telling me a group of 5 took out a group of 30 who had superior numbers? Well, with some support from the other squadron, but still. So they're saying that these two are actually also the same as well? Okay, and so this is the actual ending song. I apologize if this part is cut. That would probably be a copyright claim. Right now I'm thinking maybe it's the voice actors singing this song. The voice actors of the Kotobuki Squadron. Yep, the Kotobuki Flying Squadron. And so the sixth one is back as well. Alright. Are we gonna have a preview? Oh, we are. Okay. And then the ending is probably stuff from Sentai Fieldworks. Alright. I'll see you guys after the ending. Alrighty, so that was a soothing little ending song. Definitely an interesting episode, this second one. We gained lots of new information, we're left with a lot of questions, and there are some things I like and don't like about this episode. So let's start with things I do like. Now, first of all, I'm glad that they started to lay out the world setting a little bit more now. Through use of direct or indirect inference, we can get that, okay, so this is essentially a setting where there's lots of city-state actors or nation-state actors, maybe loosely together in some sort of federation, or confederation and whatnot, and they have their own political turmoil. They have their own political systems, and they generally need to do business and politics with each other. We can also know that this is not a sort of like wilderness, pioneering wilderness, something like the Wild West of the United States. This is not a new area. It seems more like this was an area that was thriving and booming at first, and then gradually devolved into lawlessness. So that's when the pirates came out, and then everybody started to fend for themselves. At least that's what I can gather from the pieces of information within this episode. It definitely gives me some sort of Fallout vibe, something sort of like a post-apocalyptic kind of setting. Definitely something happened in the past, and which is causing these cities, I presume, to deteriorate and maybe reduce in population. People are moving out, something of that sort. Now, what it is, it's probably not something as drastic as Fallout, right? Where there's nuclear warfare or something like that. It's probably not like that, but definitely, I'm wondering if it's maybe some sort of alternate World War II. So this is like an alternate fantasy where World War II did happen, but the results ended a little bit differently. We don't have much more information to get from that, but at least we know this is the situation as is. The second part I like is that we got to see some formation flying within this episode. So if you look at the guys, the Squadron of 8, I forgot their names already since they're clearly not that important, as well as the Kotobuki Squadron, at least when they were flying into combat, they used the Finger 4 formation, which is basically 4 planes grouped two each, with the groups of 2 each having a leader and then also a wingman. So, like, the focus of this episode, Kylie and Chika, Kylie was the leader and Chika was the wingman. So typically the leader is the one who's trying to actively search for enemies and engage enemies, whereas the wingman is the one covering their rear and also looking to see if there's any enemies behind them. So that's also part of the conflict of this episode, which is where Chika didn't really want to be the wingman, because she wanted to go off and find fights and dogfight on her own. And we also saw, I guess, the V formation, the Vic formation, at the very end, although that one is meh. I wasn't quite sure whether the pirates had some specific type of formation. If they do, I didn't recognize it. So if they did have any special formation to them, maybe let me know. And then, sorry about that. The third thing I like is in regards to the ending song. So I always love it when voice actors sing the theme songs for their own anime. It just gives me a more, I don't know, it gives me a more personal vibe to it. I'm not sure how to say it. I can definitely relate more with the characters and with the ending song or the ending scene or the opening as well, when I know that it's the same voice actors who are representing these characters singing this song. So that's something that I do like. Now, for the things I don't like. First of all, going back to the world building point, I feel like there was too much information given out this episode without any context, right? So, this episode is basically using Julia as a catalyst to, sort of bring up all these different kinds of subjects, right? But I feel like they could have done it a little bit better by providing more context. Like, it would have been so easy if Julia would just simply explain what kind of mission she was on and then give the background situation. Again, it might be a case where we're giving too much exposition by direct dialogue, but I feel like there's ways to do it that makes it seem natural, while at the same time giving enough information for us viewers. So definitely the script writing here I feel like could be improved on. Of course, they could also be trying to save it for later, and then gradually reveal more and more of the world in that way. But honestly, I feel like as a casual viewer of this fairly new franchise, it's not doing a good job of keeping my interest or allowing me to guess more or learn more about the world. Like, I don't like the fact that we have mentions of this many names, these political factions, and yet we still don't know much about them. So definitely, I feel like this is something that could be improved on. It's a simple script writing issue. If it was a design by choice, then, well, I don't like it. That's subjective, but I mean, that's subjective, but I dislike the series where they try to tease you, but they don't even tell you what they're teasing you about. So the second part I felt was a little bit too overbearing, I guess you could say, was the sort of, parallel between the Kylie Chica interaction and then also the Julie Lulu interaction, and how they were trying to fit the two. At least in my observation, they're trying to sort of shoehorn these two as a similar situation. So it seems like the focus of this episode was on Kylie and Chica, right? How these two, being the troublemakers of the Kotobuki Squadron, really act in the same way, have similar thoughts, and so it takes one to know one, right? So it's just precisely because they are so closely matched with each other that they're also able to collaborate with each other, even though they might, at least on the surface level, hate each other. And this definitely draws some parallel to Lulu and Julia as well. How they both know each other very well. They know each other's tendencies, but then on the surface, they're still kind of at a conflict, right? I it's not a bad way to structure a story, but I feel like it wasn't. Like, personally, I wasn't really convinced at the very end when Chica and Kylie made up and then started flying in unison again, in perfect unison. These sort of things are supposed to be developed over the course of maybe several different episodes or at least several different scenes. And here, yeah, you could kind of say that these two are similar, but really the only thing that we see them do is them fighting, bickering over each other, and then also tailing Julia, right? It's not quite enough where, oh, it's suddenly, hey, we're on good terms again. We know each other's thoughts. We can complete each other's sentences. This kind of thing. I feel like it was a little bit rushed, a little bit contrived. So, like I said, I get what they're trying to do. I'm not quite sure I'm sold on the way they did it. Okay, and then the third part I didn't like about this episode, and actually for these two episodes in general, is the dogfighting, actually. Now, I mentioned before, I'm not exactly the best expert on World War II era dogfighting, right? I don't claim to be an expert, I'm not. But at the very least, I know that dogfighting is a lot more complicated than just following your enemy with the exact same flight pattern, right? Throughout this entire episode and also within the last episode, they didn't really do any special maneuvers like rolling and intercepting at different angles, that kind of stuff. They basically, for the most part, just tailed the planes that they wanted to do and then turned alongside with them. They never set a different interception path or anything. And other than using this, then it's always like a flank from the top or something, like flying from top and then intercepting. Like, yeah, that's a viable tactic, but again, I feel like proper dogfighting is not only about this as well. It seems a little bit too simplistic, and considering that this is a series that seems to be building a lot of its stuff based on the technical aspects, the realism aspects of it, this is definitely some part that I feel could be improved. Also, speaking of which, another thing I'm noticing is it seems that this series is sort of glorifying the traditional Japanese doctrine of dogfighting in World War II. So there's basically two schools of thought, right? One is where the Japanese version, where they believe in smaller, nimbler, maneuverable planes and rely on their maneuverability to carry them in combat. The other side of the story, the other school of thought, is, I guess you could say, the U.S. method, where they believed in heavily armored planes, powerful planes, speedy planes, and then basically brute force through these smaller, nimbler fighters. So they didn't really want to get into a dogfight situation where they turn alongside with them. they use different tactics, like I believe it's called dive bombing. No, it's not dive bombing. What's it called? Basically, where they dive and then they rely on their speed and their general sturdiness to basically outdive zeros and then loop back around and then make easy work of them. So, but in this case, right, within this episode, just in itself, we see basically evolutions of the same type of fighter craft. So one would be the Hayabusa, which is the Type 1, and then the second one would be the Shoki. And then the third one and last one, okay, I really forgot the name of the last the last fighter, but the one that the bandits were using, right? So they're basically Type 1, Type 2, Type 3. Now, granted, that doesn't exactly mean that they're direct evolutions of each other. They're not exactly straightforward advancements of each other, but generally speaking, the further along you go, the more armor and armament and speed and power you have, and you rely less and less on the maneuverability aspects, which the Hayabusas and the Zeros were so famous for. Here, though, even though, like, within this episode, we see that the Type 3 planes that the bandits were flying, they numbered around 20 to 30, whereas the Type 1 Hayabusas and the Type 2 Shokis added together, at most, added to 13. And that's not even counting the ones that were ambushed, so probably the actual fighting number is smaller than that. So you say, let's say 10-something maneuverable planes versus 30-something planes which have heavier armor, heavier armaments, more speed, more power, and yet it seems that our Kotobuki squadron made easy work of these 30 more advanced fighters. First of all, this is definitely not... Anytime you're in a 10 versus 30 situation, I feel like, especially in terms of air combat, you're already at a huge disadvantage, right? This isn't something like where in ancient medieval warfare, right? Where you could try to concentrate your forces into one side and then break through the weak points of the enemy. This is the air. You don't really have any, weak sides, if you will. Or if there are, they can easily be covered by a proper formation, which in this case, it seems that the bandits did have. And yet, again, our Kotobuki pilots, our girls just basically tore through them without any problem. They kept up with them within turns, within dives, within climbs. That doesn't seem very realistic to me. So, and that's a problem, right? Because as a sort of conclusion to what I'm trying to say is, I feel like this series right now, it's not quite realistic or technical enough to really get the military geeks on board. And at the same time, it's not casual enough. There's not enough explained to the casual viewer where they would find this series interesting. So it's really caught in sort of like this weird limbo area where, again, going back to my first episode review, it doesn't seem like it has an identity. I'm still not quite sure who this series is aimed for, to be honest. And it's a shame, really, because I actually do want to like this series. I think the concept is interesting, and also, I would love any other realistic military animes, because there's too few of those out there. But right now, it doesn't seem to be quite hitting the mark of the realism thing. And it's definitely not going, or not quite at the slice of life route yet. Although, again, next episode seems to be more of a character building episode as well. So maybe we'll see how the series actually evolves. In any case, that has been my review for the second episode. I'm still quite on the fence about it. I have to say that it's more on the meh side than on the good side, but we shall see. There's at least 2 more episodes we can go through before we can make at least a quick conclusion as to this series. So, that has been my review. Again, I apologize for my voice. I do have a sore throat. Hopefully it didn't affect the audio too much. And in any case, let me know if you guys notice anything that I failed to notice, any theories or anything regarding to the realism aspects. And yeah, that about covers it. I'll see you guys next time.